What happened when Jesus was resurrected from the dead? First off, let's set the scene. Jesus has been crucified by the Romans and is dead. A man called Joseph of Arimathea has taken Jesus' body, with the permission from the Roman military governor, and he has placed it into his own tomb. And we read about this in the Gospel record of Matthew, chapter 27, verses 57 to 60. Which says, "When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea called Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. And he went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus, and Pilate ordered it to be given to him. And Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a linen cloth, and he laid it in his own tomb, which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away." So after Jesus is placed in the tomb, the chief priests and the Pharisees go to the Roman military governor and they ask that the tomb be secured with Roman soldiers stationed at the entrance. And they do this because Jesus had said that he would be raised from the dead after 3 days. Now the chief priests and the Pharisees are concerned that Jesus' followers would break into the tomb, steal the body, and then claim that he had been raised from the dead. And there being no body in the tomb, that would be a good way to start rumours. And we read that this was the case in Matthew chapter 27, verses 62 to 66. The next day, that is after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate. And they said, "Sir, we remember how that impostor said while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise.' Therefore, order the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples go and steal him away and tell the people, and say he has been risen from the dead, and the last fraud will be worse than the first." And Pilate said to them, "You have a guard of soldiers? Go, make it as secure as you can." And so they went and they made the tomb secure by sealing the stone and setting a guard. So Pontius Pilate, the military governor here, agrees to station soldiers at the tomb for 3 days to make the tomb secure, to prevent someone from coming and stealing the body. Now the tomb in which Jesus' body is laid to rest is sealed with a large rock, which would have weighed over a ton, and there is a detachment of Roman soldiers stationed in front of it to prevent anyone taking the body away. Then on the 3rd day, God raises Jesus from the dead. What happens next? Let's walk through the events of that day of the resurrection together. As the sun rises on that day, a number of women go to the tomb where Jesus is buried with various spices to embalm his body. So if we're going over to Matthew chapter 16 and the first 7 verses there, we read, "When the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the 1st day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. And they were saying to one another, 'Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?' And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled back. It was very large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe. And they were alarmed." And the man said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." On the way to the tomb, the women are unsure how they're going to get access to the body to embalm it. They're discussing who's going to roll the stone away from the tomb. They don't seem to be particularly concerned about getting past the Roman soldiers, and presumably this is because they think the Romans will have no objection to letting a group of women go into the tomb and embalm the body, but they are concerned about moving the stone out of the way. When they arrive at the tomb, they find the stones already being rolled away. The women then enter the tomb, and inside they find an angel in the form of a young man sitting there, and this alarms the women. They're understandably quite concerned. The angel then tells the women that Jesus is risen from the dead and he's not there. And the angel encourages them to look and see that Jesus' body is not in the tomb. And then he tells them to go and tell Jesus' disciples, and that he tells them, the angel tells the women that they will see him again. And the women are afraid and they run away. And at this point they go in different directions. Mary Magdalene goes to the disciples and tells them what she's seen. And Peter and John then run to the tomb to see for themselves, to confirm that Jesus' body is no longer there. John runs faster than Peter, but as he gets to the tomb, he stops outside and waits, and Peter overtakes him and goes in first. Peter and John both see that the tomb is empty, and we're told that this is the point that they believe that Jesus was raised from the dead. They believe it at that point. They had to see for themselves there was no body. Mary has come back to the tomb with Peter and John, but she stays outside while they both go inside. And while she's outside, Jesus appears to her and speaks to her, after which Mary tells the disciples that she's now seen Jesus alive. We're then told about some occasions during that day where Jesus appears to individuals. We can't be certain in exactly which order these specific points appeared in. Jesus appears to his followers who they've set off from Jerusalem to Emmaus. And as they're walking on the journey, Jesus appears and he speaks with them as they go. And after they realize that it was Jesus, these two people turn back and go back to Jerusalem to tell everyone else what's happened. Another event here, Jesus also appears to some of the women who are on their way back from the tomb and tells them to inform his brethren about what they've seen and what's happened. We don't know what order those two events happen in, but they're both happening on that day. At the same time, the local authorities have been made aware that the tomb is open. The soldiers have run away and the body is not present. So they fabricate a story to try and explain why the body of Jesus is not there anymore, why they can't produce it. And in the end, they settle on telling everyone that Jesus' disciples came and stole the body. This is what they were afraid of at first, so they decide to tell people it's what's happened. And they bribe the soldiers to say that they fell asleep on duty, and let it all happen. In the evening of that day, the disciples are gathered together in the room where they had the Last Supper, and they're afraid of what will happen next. They've locked the doors because they're afraid of what might happen to them. Jesus appears in that upper room and speaks to his disciples. He shows them the wounds on his body from when he was crucified, and he has something to eat as well. He eats a bit of fish. For whatever reason, Thomas isn't there at that point. So he doesn't believe the rest of the disciples when they say, "Oh, Jesus was here." He goes, "Well, I've seen Jesus die. I don't believe you." A week later, the disciples are back in the room, and this time Thomas is with them, and again Jesus appears to them. Thomas sees Jesus and believes that he is risen from the dead. Time moves on, and the 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, come to an end around this point, and the book of Acts takes over the narrative, with Jesus' ascension to heaven in the first chapter, and then it carries on with the various acts undertaken by the apostles. It can be challenging to put this sequence of events together. There are 4 books which record the narrative between them, but none of the books records every single detail by itself, which means that there's some study, some cross-referencing, some checking that's required to assemble the events into their order. But it can be done, and we invite you to do so and check our working. If you want to stay up to date with the other subjects on the Gospel Online, then please subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you like this video, please do press like. Your support does help us and it means a lot to us. Thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Goodbye.